It seems that somebody had the prior knowledge of how these shifts occur, the genetics that occur on the shift, the frequency of either heaviness and gravity itself occurs. There's a shift. Magnetic fields are shifting. That would change the way you perceive reality. The integration of AI into a species, whether it's Homo sapiens sapien, or it could have been Denisovans, or it could have been Neanderthals, or whatever.
Homo paracus.
And the cycles seem to be mapped out by a lot of the elites, so they understand exactly what we're transitioning to. So why would you bother saving something that's not going to be literally there after the shift? Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age Conversations covers changes in our climate due to a new and intensifying grand solar minimum. In the media, overlooking, downplaying, or burying cold weather changes occurring on our planet. This is in order to keep the global warming agenda steaming full speed ahead. I do this podcast and radio program because we need to begin conversations on how to adapt our food growing strategies long before 2030 as agricultural zones shift, affecting global crop output, but very few mainstream media outlets are talking about the most important issue of our time, cold weather crop losses. Our sun is going through a 400-year cycle, which has effects on our weather patterns as our magnetosphere weakens and the jet streams go out of flow. It's not CO2, it's not you, it's the sun. Are you ready to thrive in the grand solar minimum? Then join me for Mini Ice Age Conversations. I'm your host, David Dubine, creator of the Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age 2015 to 2035 video series. All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on this planet. Welcome to the show, Mini Ice Age Conversation. My name is David Dubine, your host. I'm here with Ransom from 420 TV.
And then, I don't know what these cycles, but I was looking at this other article here talking about 15,000 years ago, ear infections plagued the people in Israel, according to them. That even though I didn't think Israel was 15,000 years old. But anyway, I wonder, would people get sick eventually when our own compass in our own head, I'm sure that we have a degree of magnetite probably in our pineal gland, and maybe even these are magnetic, your inner ear parts, which are some of the most complex organs that we know of in the animal world, happens to be in our ear. It keeps your equilibrium. I guess where I was going is around that time as we have all of these other problems on the earth. 15,000 years ago, and again probably 11 and 12,000 years ago, something really rough was going on. And people were having odd symptoms. And if you know anything about Neanderthal man and human beings, you'd know Neanderthal man did not have these little inner ear bones, and they probably couldn't do the gymnastic stuff like we do, exactly, like, running and hunting with the spear or any of that stuff. They were ambush predator people. And there may be a reason why they disappeared. They might have no longer been able to function in the new cycle because of brand new magnetic conditions and other other factors.
No, it fits perfectly, because if you knew that knowledge as well, and you knew a lot of species wouldn't make it through this time with the geomagnetic reversal or excursion, whichever way it's going, that would be humans included. Now, would it be a genetic specific race of human that wouldn't make it through the genetic shift here, or the cosmic shift, for lack of a better word? I mean, it's literally cosmic radiation shift. So would it be a percentage? Would it be an age? Would it be a demographic? Would it be a sex, male, female? Would it be a height, or would it be a weight? I mean, there's all these things that you look that there's instant jumps in the fossil records that make no sense. And Robert Felix, when he wrote that book, Magnetic Leaps and Magnetic Reversals, was talking about the same exact thing. These new species seem to come instantaneously out of nowhere. And also at the same time, there seem to be mass extinctions out of nowhere, or reductions and bottlenecks in gene and DNA pools. If you knew these cycles, and you already knew it was completely gone anyway, would you just reset the economy and try to keep everybody placid as we went through the changes to try to maintain some normalcy and functioning systems in government as we went through? Or would you let it all ride and be like, hey, man, they deserve to be free and let them do what they want? Or what would you do? Hard to answer that question.
But what if I could offer you several products like maybe this bionic supervision night vision eye with 46 times zoom, more cells than the human eyeball, and also give you a neural link that will give you a new magnetic compass and connect you to the matrix. You know, the world's going over to everything is fake. Everything is 3D, AI anchors everything. So we're moving into an era where the exact same thing is happening, except for there's meddlers now. There's these elite meddlers with technology, the technocrats, and they're fiddling with things, with genetics. They're fiddling with technologies that will, you know, continually change. Do you think that before we burn everything down and realize that our governments have sent us down the wrong path and that there was no reason for not being prepared, that people will finally, they'll either pick two things. They'll be a slave to the new AI-powered fake world, you know, where knowledge is bad and lies are truth and freedom is slavery and or slavery is freedom and, you know, all of that stuff. And then the rest of the people, what are they going to do? I mean, like hide, war with these other people, because that lifestyle of the fakeness needs other people to serve. They need other people to grow the food. I mean, that's one thing that the elite, unless they're using all robots, which is still possible, will still need a number of people to bring the bacon home, so to speak, even though I know they won't eat that. The elite won't.
Well, it depends if you think that this next shift is going to do the same thing that it did with Neanderthal and Homo sapiens sapien. You're talking about all this upgraded tech that you could put in your eye, but think about what you just said. The Homo sapiens sapien was the species of the day, and then something came along that started to become this new sort of integrated bionic capability, and then suddenly we got hit with all these cosmic rays and magnetic reversal like we are now. And the split off was the different society you're speaking of jumped in front, and that became us. Because you see, I read this incredible book, Us and Them, and it was about Neanderthals took the night, and we as Homo sapiens sapiens took the day, and they hunted us. But we had those agility skills, which they didn't have, and the organizational skills. So you could talk about the Clovis people, which were larger as well, or you could talk about the Denisovans, which were also larger. So even if we go back into, say, 70,000 years ago, and if we're looking at these shifts on like a 12,000-year cycle that seem to occur with regularity, you know, the 12,000-year Younger Dryas period, we got the 24,000-year shift that occurred, something that wiped out at least whatever civilizations were back then. 36,000 years ago, according to Plato and whatnot, there was the beginning of the civilization of Atlantis. And we continue back on these 12,000-year iterations, and we come back 72,000, which brings us to Lemuria, the supposed kingdom over in Asia. And then we come back, and then it brings us back into the last interglacial. So what is it with these 12,000-year iterations and these jumps in like species that occur with this? And a dominant thinking form of the day also seems to shift on this 12,000-year cycle. So if we're here again because it seems that we're at the end of the ages, literally, and there's so many things talking about this particular time space that we're entering of shift and change of vibrational frequency for how we exist, or a species itself, or a reset of the earth, and all these things are culminating at the same time right now. It seems that somebody had the prior knowledge of how these shifts occur, the genetics that occur on the shift, the frequency of either heaviness and gravity itself occurs, there's a shift. Magnetic fields are shifting. That would change the way you perceive reality. The integration of AI into a species, whether it's Homo sapiens sapien, or it could have been Denisovans, or it could have been Neanderthals, or whatever.
Homo paracus.
Yeah, give it to me, man. And the cycles seem to be mapped out by a lot of the elites, so they understand exactly what we're transitioning to. So why would you bother saving something that's not going to be literally there after the shift? Yeah. The reason those dams collapsed, nobody repaired them. Why not? Did they know that infrastructure is not going to be usable anymore? So who cares? Is it like the same thing? Who cares in a couple, 2-3 years when the shift comes? I'm saying by 2024, we're going to see some super rockin', crazy, unbelievable magnetic, tectonic, and volcanic activity on this planet as the four gas giants rip us magnetically out from the sun, and the sun's in an incredibly low magnetic phase which can't pull us back. We're going to go so far out into the solar, we're going to get ripped out of our orbit about 700,000 to 1,000,000 miles further out during the winter, and 1,000,000 to 700,000 miles closer during the summers. It's going to be incredible, the tugs and the temperature differences.
We know that they didn't disappear totally, and they were bigger people, hands down. I mean, bones, thickness. Cro-Magnon was also big, which is supposedly our direct before us, but we know that we have archaic DNA, and people around the planet have different kinds of archaic DNA, and you're not supposed to talk about some of these topics because people, get upset, even though it's not really saying negative things. It's just saying that, there was a lot of different kind of human beings on the planet at one time, and they weren't all us. However, we did mix with them, like Denisovan and Neanderthal. We know that there's DNA and now it turns out Asian people tend to have more Neanderthal than European people, and European people have a higher degree of Denisovan. But there were others, like it's not a real name, but Homo paracus, the guys with the big elongated skulls, the Wari tribe and the Paracas people down in Peru. It's not just our animal species that changed. The other animals, not counting the hominids or the humans of different kinds, but the other animals, we know that a lot of them disappeared because of probably our behavior. Other stuff had nothing to do with us. It was just the cycle that was happening. But I was looking at this weird behavior. I got it up on the screen there, where dolphins that are used to interacting with another intelligent species, us, the dolphins are bringing gifts ashore in Australia, and they might be doing it in other places in the world. But this is just pretty bizarre, very intelligent behavior, a sign of our times maybe. But yeah, it's weird. They're bringing gifts and stuff like that. So even the way that we have been, the normal way that humans have been going along, other species on the planet have been, I guess you could call it, co-evolving or adjusting, adapting to human beings and the way that we live. Now, if everything changes, including everything about us, our trash, the way we do everything, all kinds of species are going to have to adapt to a brand new world. So think about all these billions of species on the earth that, like us, are going to have to adapt pretty fast. And judging from the past, that doesn't really happen so much. So a lot of the stuff that you know of today will be replaced with something new, maybe even only a few generations down the lineage there.
Or the blink of an eye.
It could.
Now, why is it that crocodiles and sharks have been around for so many years? And they, there's some species that seem not to be so much affected by the magnetic field shift or the cosmic rays and different galactic energies and radiation shifts. Sharks and crocodiles, reptiles, seem to be one of those things that don't have as much physiological shifting as us with larger organs. Well, a crocodile is 18 feet longer. It's got a way bigger heart than you do. Not in terms of loving things, but actual size.
I actually think I have an answer to that question based on just random stuff I've learned. Both sharks and reptiles, specifically the old ones like dinosaurs and stuff like that in that family, they don't really mutate that often. And matter of fact, they don't respond. They have chemicals and things in there that make their DNA reset. Also, like sharks, we know from the Bikini Island experiments, mutated, but it didn't hurt them. So they just kept on going along like normal. And I'm sure that they did that in the past. However, surface dwellers, and you can account for both of those, are partially aquatic and full aquatic species, giving them a layer of protection also from solar radiation or cosmic radiation or even environmental. There's a little bit of, and plus both of those species can go insanely long times. It's both of those species in my mind are the exact example save point. If you've ever played a video game and you can't figure out how to get past the next stage, you die, you go back to this point. Well, like I do, that we have a reptilian designed brain. It's like the basic intelligence for land. And even if it gets reset back to a crocodile or an alligator or caiman or whatever, it's going to go from there, right? And if there's no other species around, because that's the only one that lived, it's open for an explosion of finding new niches and all of that stuff. They're like both of them are the perfect reset in case of catastrophic mass extinctions, both the shark and the crocodile. Ultra predators.
Megalodon. In your neighborhood, in your river, don't go swimming with a tube in the creek. You might get nibbled.
Well, I thought I'd bring us back from the hypothetical and cool, sciencey stuff. And you sent me 3 good articles I was checking out about, how our economy is about to pop. And it makes me wonder if the Ron Paul, is always warned about the monetary system popping. Well, it may be doing that, but this time it's not like he thought. It's a very planned one to send us over to digital control. And I was looking at all these, and you're right. Even if the shelves are full of stuff, what happens when your money can't buy it? I'm already seeing exact same scenes as I saw at the fall of the Soviet Union, where people were in lines. I know I've brought that up before, but now it's happening. I mean, 6 foot apart. Come in, you only get one item. If there's an item, it's about to get scary, and people just don't get it.
Finance, think about the gold-silver ratio for a second. The amount of silver ounces it would take to buy 1 ounce of gold, or trade evenly for that. Like through history, it's been what? 12.5? All through the Roman era, all through the Greek era, because they looked at how much gold or silver is in the literal crust of the earth, and they're like, well, there's 12.5 times less gold than there is silver. So they made the base ratio on actually the amount of the minerals in the Earth's crust. Now, we've deviated from that and went to 120 at a high. Even if we were to dip down to like 15 to 1 again, your ounces of silver would be worth well over $100. And that's with no price change today. But, if that's going to start to correlate and match up, gold's going to skyrocket as well. Metals are a solid, very solid. It's the amount of paper that's just going to hyperinflate. We've seen Austria in 1914 through 1918 go through their hyperinflationary event. And then we saw Weimar, the Republic, everybody's real familiar with what happened to Germany after World War II. But are we as Americans prepared for something like that? So I'm really curious how it's going to move forward with monetary devaluation. So as far as my research is going so far, there's going to be big ticket items are going to get really difficult to sell starting now. And luxury cars and brand, all that stuff's just going to just drop to the floor. But then after that happens, and the monetary system keeps printing and printing and printing and printing and printing and more printing and buying, and eventually after the Fed owns everything and the Treasury owns everything in America, they're going to collapse the currency, but then it's going to hyperinflate. Something like Germany's prices or Zimbabwe's prices, whatever it is. Now, Americans can't handle that.
The kids down in Venezuela were making cool tourist, necklaces and, little trinkets and stuff out of all the money that's worth nothing.
Yeah, and you saw those old photos in Germany when the kids were building blocks. Instead of having wood building blocks like we do to build houses, they were making it out of 1,000 of the bills of a 1,000-mark bill wrapped up real tight to make a square, and they were building play kids' houses out of all the former money.
They were playing Monopoly before it was cool.
Yeah, I'll take that apartment building. Because, marching forward into this, part of your survival is going to be able to have something that holds the value during the reset that allows you to still buy, sell, and trade what you need to stay alive. We are moving to the digital system, there's no doubt. What do we go to? Chainlink just came out with Oracle, and it is the first private and corporate blockchain that's interoperable. This is the first time that it's ever happened. So when we're looking out on the landscape of news of blockchain with the Ripple net that had come out, so I want to make sure I phrase this correctly here, because this is one of those, actually, you're hearing a story before I'm even going to print it. This is something I'm working on right now for the next video. The last thing when you go into a hyperinflationary event is corporate and government still need to have a way to settle the debt or settle purchases or credit debits between themselves on large scales, like central banks settling for the night or a corporation settling for a month, whatever. It doesn't matter on the time scale. But somebody's got to agree on the value of said thing, whatever it might be. It could be seashells, man. It could be feathers. I don't care. It could be tulips. As long as we agree it's worth something, and we both agree that it's worth something, then we can settle on it because we've agreed on that sort of medium of exchange. So here we go. I'll read it for you here. Chainlink now introduces the world's first hybrid blockchain Oracle integration. See, this is going to combine the public and the permissioned or the private blockchains And then what it's going to do is push or facilitate more institutional involvement in something called DeFi, which is decentralized finance. Now, the problem with this overnight repo crisis where the banks couldn't get the liquidity, and this is what was happening while they were printing so many more dollars, is governments around the world and bigger entities and trading houses were running out of money because they'd already sold everything. And they're still like, we still need more dollars. The Fed was even loaning out and printing like $350 billion per day at the high point of that. They totally ran out of any liquidity around the planet for banks, exchange-traded funds, bond houses, and different treasury issuances and bond issuances from governments or corporations across the planet to operate and cross-settle through the night on 8-hour iterations moving around the planet. But now what RippleNet allows it to do is digital asset instant liquidity. So whatever the bottleneck was for the repo overnight lending rate markets, that RippleNet solves it. And it's also on a distributed ledger, which dovetails straight into Chainlink here because you got the public and permission blockchain solutions, which is also going to include DLT, which is the distributed ledger. So what they've done is they reset the monetary system basement framework right here. So everything we have existing today in the way that things settle through using SWIFT system or whatever you want to use for money to move from bank to bank, corporation to corporation, government to government, they've already set the entire new framework here. This is it. When I saw this Chainlink article, I was like, all right, they have everything they need possible to integrate and move the entire system digital now because everybody's covered from banks, countries, and now companies. The only people that aren't so covered are you and me. They left us out of this unless you're buying digital currency and you actually have full crypto in your own private wallet. You're left out of this flash loan system here. We are going digital, and they're going to crash everything to the absolute 0 point where money will be worth nothing, less than zero. Weimar is going to be like, damn, I'm glad they still had some value left in the German Weimar Republic afterward because it's going to be like Zimbabwe, damn. They were living high on the hog in that country. Their money was worth so much more compared to what happened in the 2021 crash and hyperinflation event. And I'll stop rambling, man, because this is the thing I'm really into now is how to preserve the wealth during this crash so you can come out and buy a freaking house with an ounce of silver. You know, this is where we're going with this deflation and hyperinflation event. Whoever's left, I should say. This is the final piece of the puzzle that was never there. You can't integrate and borrow and use that liquidity. Not you as an individual. No way.
And they really hate all of this things because it's so hard for governments to keep up to date with things that change like this and track it. That's like, but they think that they have it down now, and that's why they're wanting to get rid of the whole paper system. I keep seeing articles. I mean, we've been seeing them actually for probably a decade hinting at the idea that you don't need paper. With this COVID started, you said right away, and you called it like it was there in China. They started already burning money, trying to force people over into an entire digital system, and they want it to be their system so that they could have full control over everything you do, especially if you are a person that has nothing prepped, that still refuses to get it, that things are about to change. And what if they didn't? What if everything went super positive and rainbows came out and everybody, you know, you would still be ahead of the game paying attention to all of these things.
If you go back to that 1988 Economist magazine cover where they had the phoenix rising out of the burning ashes of the paper dollar fiat system below, you can clearly see the Japanese yen, you can clearly see the dollar and the pound, but a few other are a little bit obscure or obfuscated, so you can't see exactly which currency it was. But looking back now to the beginning of 2020, you actually get a very different understanding of what that means now, because this currency system and the economy we have is burning to the ground, and it is not coming back. When you start to look at it now, because at the bottom under that phoenix is our current economy being burnt to the ground on purpose, and the replacement is crypto. If you're going to learn something new this week, learn blockchain, learn what a damn Bitcoin is, learn where to go buy it, anything. Ethereum is absolutely going to be the new Fed coin. I saw this report with the Digital Dollar Project and all these people from the CFTC, which is the Futures Trade Commission, the ones that stopped all of the initial coin offerings, the ICOs back in 2017. The same directors that blocked all the ICOs in 2017 are now the ones leading the Digital Dollar Project. And they're talking about an integrated Fed coin coming in, and the Fed coin is going to be Ethereum. not part of Ethereum, like they're going to create something to run on Ethereum. I was told and done some research that Ethereum is going to be the new Fed coin. Everything's going to run off of that again because it'll leave us at the central bank currency level again. If Ethereum becomes the new U.S. dollar as a central bank reserve currency, just like it is now, everything else runs off of Ethereum. Think about that for a second.
They definitely have American money in there. I can see Abraham Lincoln right there under the French thing on his head. What is that called? The Fleur de Lion or whatever it's called. I don't remember the name of it. That's a weird thing to have on that eagle. It's a horned eagle, too. Look at it. Well, you're probably not seeing the other one, but yeah, I see that dual sovereignty eagle everywhere. But that's immediately what I thought of, the lamb's blood. We want your firstborn. You ever trip on that story? Not to go off and weird. That is a bizarre story. That's like a UFO story because they say it's the Lord. However, the Lord can't tell the difference between who lives where. So it needed a mark, which is very bizarre. That they already, participated there. It's really weird. I mean, that whole story, somebody going door to door. It sounds a lot like authoritarian weird stuff in modern times where they went looking for your kids. You're going to have proof that you did that. So, we're going to be having a new era of what do you call that? Faking documents and stuff. Lots of document fraud of people trying to pretend that they're part of the system. Lots of digital fraud where how do I get this little stamp or chip so I can travel freely?
It's not on the blockchain. So if it can't be verified on the blockchain, it won't matter how much external documentation you have. Because unless it syncs with the blockchain, you're not going to be in register because they could easily back check and verify, which is the scariest thing about it too, right?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You would have to have some hardcore digital fraud skills to be able to participate in any economy-based things.
They're not going to let you into the supermarkets.
I'll be eating those crickets we were talking about earlier. And as these articles that you sent me point out, our economy is kind of going in a weird direction too. It's all going digital. It's inflation, deflation, all at the same time, where the money is not worth much. But didn't you guys all know that whenever they sent you $1,200 that money had to come from somewhere? And the elite and the government aren't going to pay for it. So they just gave you your own money back at a devalued rate. That's all that happened with that.
And I'm wondering with some of these record food prices that we're seeing right now, if you look across the landscape, I did a video about record beef prices at $3.30 wholesale. Wow. And today it's $4.10. So it jumped already, and I'm thinking as we look across the landscape, all I get is message of expensive, how high it went, it doubled, there's a crazy amount of increase in price, and now they're putting a COVID tax on a lot of bills in different restaurants and things, like that chicken restaurant up in Chicago. They put a 26% COVID tax on the thing. Is that because you're really paying more because it's that much more difficult to get in the supply chain, or is it already starting to sink in? So is it truly that the food's becoming more expensive, or are we getting into an inflationary situation where you're already seeing in real time, week by week, and this is what happened in Zimbabwe that I lived through. Week by week, you could buy more with $1 than you could the week before because your exchange rate was going so badly south. And if we're already into it where it crept up from $3.60 to $4.10, and I had my own experience buying the yogurt, I went in a week earlier and it was my regular price around $3.60, $3.70 that I'm used to seeing, and that was $4.20. Speaking of your channel, jumping up, and now it's $4.50 for the same yogurt. Yeah, what happened?
The food is necessarily becoming more expensive, not even connected to the value of the dollar, because they're destroying of it, which makes less of it, which means that they can up the price of it and you'll pay for it at the store. And like I showed you, you may not even get much choice of what you're going to get. What if you only had $20 and you're used to going, like, say you go there and you could get a whole meal for $20. You could get some meat, you could get some vegetables, you could get some starch, maybe even some sweeties for the end of it and some iced tea or something. God knows. Now you go to the store, you got your choice of $10 package of little meat, because that's all that's there. there was no beef, there was no pork, there was no chicken. I could have bought like $7, $8 a pound lamb, which is probably delicious. I'm not saying that, but then you can't buy the other things to go with your food. And then you go over to the fresh vegetables. The price has gone up on all that stuff too. Why is that? Is it because they're turning vegetables under the ground, not selling it? Is it because they're destroying the beef? Is it because they're destroying the chickens, the pork, and then they're artificially making a food choice? It's like they are training you like prisoner training so that you'll be used to the system that will be in place, rations by the government,